Look at the starry sky. Is there life out there? Are there extraterrestrial forms of intelligence? Aliens? What might they be? What might aliens from outer space look like? And if they do exist, where is everyone, after all? These questions are far more complex than they may seem at first glance. What you are seeing on the screen right now is a simulation of galactic colonization. In this model, the ships of a civilization move at lossless speeds comparable to what our modern flying machines are capable of, that is, about 30 kilometers per second, 18,641 miles per second. After the ship arrives at its destination, the newly founded colony is given as much as 100,000 years to send the next ship to the next uninhabited stellar area. The maximum distance for the flight is 10 light years, and the duration of the flight is an incredible 300,000 years. And what do you think? With such an ultra-conservative calculation of almost the entire galaxy, where it takes 100,000 years for light to travel from one edge of the galaxy to the other, think about it, almost the entire galaxy can be populated faster than 1 billion years. That's pretty darn fast when you consider the size of the galaxy. But still, 1 billion years is a long time. There are far less harsh alternatives. There was a point in Earth's history when dinosaurs had been living on Earth for over 100 million years. If by that time there was a civilization on the other side of our galaxy capable of traveling between stars at a speed at least 1,000 times less than the speed of light, which is quite realistic today, they would have been here. Not in the sense that they could purposefully fly here, no. In that more or less digestible amount of time, they would have spread to the entire Milky Way. And that's still a very conservative estimate. Many scientists who deal with this issue cite figures that do not exceed 50 million years in any way. So a civilization that arose before humanity, say, by about 1/100% of the universe's existence, could, and maybe even should, have colonies all over the galaxy. Look up in the sky. Do you see anything? This question is actually not as simple as it may seem. It is believed that there are several possible solutions to the paradox. Solution number 1. We are an underdeveloped race. We are smugly waiting for someone from faraway places to come to us. If someone has the technology to contact us, they understandably have more advanced technology than ours. We can't do that. If they have more advanced technology, we're an underdeveloped race to them. And of course, they might think it's pointless to approach a civilization that can't even be welcomed, because they might not even understand it. Hardly any of you would go to a zoo just to interact with animals. Even if you do, what do you expect them to do? By the way, this led to another solution, the zoo hypothesis. Let's imagine that we are animals and aliens are humans. And they are so different that they don't even try to get through to us. And even if they do try to get through to us, we don't realize it. We are in a sanctuary, and we think that what we see is all there is. We can run anywhere we want. Here's a new planet. Here's a new galaxy. Like animals in large sanctuaries, we have never seen our creator. Do you get it? It's exciting. It's called letting things happen. Maybe doing it regularly for a purpose, like for the sake of our natural evolution, or maybe we haven't reached the point where they decide to reach out to us. Wait, if we are animals to them, then who are animals to them? Here's how it works. We evolve the way we do. There has been no contact with other civilizations, and no one has helped us. If someone had helped us, what is known as the butterfly effect would have happened, and something would have happened. TV series like Star Trek and The Orville illustrate this well. Under Union rules, you had to leave the girl to die just to not interfere with their culture. Even if we don't observe the presence of aliens now, it doesn't mean they haven't visited Earth before. The so-called paleo-contact hypothesis suggests that for the primitive aborigines of the Earth, alien astronauts may have appeared as beings of divine nature, endowed with supernatural power. In this case, such an extraordinary event must have been reflected in legends and myths. In 1786, The famous French navigator La Pérouse visited the Indians of northwestern America. A century later, the analysis of legends and myths about this visit allowed to reconstruct with great accuracy even the appearance of La Pérouse's ships. There is another paradox of SETI. This is a program to search for extraterrestrial intelligence. The essence of the paradox is that while we are searching, we ourselves do not send any signals to be found. The whole point is that if all civilizations search for extraterrestrial intelligence the way we do, no one will ever find anything. How silly. There are two options. Either we send signals or we don't. We either send signals, we get detected and are visited by aliens arriving in cool cars, shot at and robbed, as many people have thought, including Stephen Hawking's, or we don't send signals and celebrate. Keep waiting on our own. We chose the second option. We made attempts to contact them, but it wasn't very serious. SETI's problem is that our search is too narrowly focused. They are not looking for organisms throughout the universe. They are only trying to detect signals of certain radio frequencies within a certain radius. A lot of people think it's pointless. In the US, there was a Golden Fleece Award given for wasting public money, and the SETI program was awarded twice in 1978 and 1993. But the fact is, we haven't found anything. By the way, that doesn't stop Seth Shostak, SETI's senior astronaut, from promising that we'll find other civilizations by 2036. All of our radio wave signals have traveled a distance of only 100-odd light-years. The width of the observable universe is 46 billion light-years. It's like screaming when you've lost your voice. It would be very optimistic to think that they communicate the same way we do. Why do we think that even if they receive our signal, they will understand its meaning? What do we even expect? Besides, no one has ever seen aliens, although some people say so. All these ideas of what they might look like are the result of science fiction. Researchers say that potentially habitable Earth-sized planets orbit around 22 Sun-like stars observed by the Kepler telescope. Do you know how many stars it observed? About 100,000. That means there must be dozens of habitable planets in the universe. Maybe there's water on them. Maybe we could even live on them. Maybe that's the answer. It's more complicated than that. No one can guarantee that these planets are actually habitable, even if the conditions seem perfect. That's why, even far away, if we see a second Earth in a telescope, we won't be 100% sure that it can support life. At this point, we are alone, because the opposite has yet to be proven. But after analyzing the history of life on Earth, scientists conclude that changes such as oxygenic photosynthesis, the emergence of the eukaryotic cell, multicellularity, and intelligence, using tools would likely arise on any Earth-like planet given enough time. If you think this is some frivolous green man topic, I will tell you that it is one of the most important scientific problems to understand today. If we don't understand what is involved and why, we risk facing reality. Everyone knows that when we look up into the sky, we see the cosmic past, but few people think that we probably also see the human future. My point is not at all about our space expansion, but rather that space looks so lifeless, clearly for a reason. However, the total cost of the Apollo program to land astronauts on the Moon from 1960 to 1973 was $25.4 billion, which is about $152 billion at 2019 exchange rates. With that kind of money, you could build 112 of the largest cruise ships in the world. And here's an asteroid not far beyond the orbit of Mars called 16 Psyche, which is made up of iron, nickel, and gold, and costs like $65 million Apollo programs, or $10 quadrillion dollars. It is the economic benefit that is pushing the space industry, as well as cheaper flight technology. This is where the real era of space settlement will begin. The science fiction writer Herbert Wells published an article in 1896 titled The Martian Mind, which discussed the idea of the evolution of living protoplasm on Mars. Wells conceded that Martians could differ significantly from Earthlings, both externally and functionally, as well as in behavior. He hypothesized that the differences might extend beyond anything our imaginations could suggest. But, as the history of science fiction shows, our imaginations are often limited by personal experience and its combinations. Therefore, in our conceptions of intelligent visitors from outer space, they often resemble ourselves. The British philosopher John Locke said, "There is nothing in thinking that is not previously contained in feeling." This thought is supported by Barlow's Guide to Aliens, a science fiction reference book containing images of alien species from various science fiction works. This guidebook illustrates earthly representations of extraterrestrial life. Let's turn to science fiction. Howard Phillips Lovecraft, who needs no introduction, simply couldn't stand how stereotypically and banal aliens are portrayed in fantasy stories. So he wrote his Color from Space, in which he gave out such an alien that no one would ever think of accusing him of mediocrity. In the story, which, by the way, Lovecraft himself called his favorite, we cannot understand not the motives of the space guest, not whether he has any emotions or... In fact, we can't even tell for sure whether this creature belongs to one or many beings. Is it a creature at all? Craft portrays the extraterrestrial visitor as some kind of radiant something. The first and foremost oddity is that this entity glows an unknown color, a color that has nothing to do with the shades of the known color scheme. All the reader has to do is imagine a color that no one has ever seen. Of course, from a scientific point of view, this all sounds a bit naive, but Lovecraft brings to light an important topic. This is a serious scientific question that has been investigated by many scientists. Men, if we meet aliens, can we even understand what we're seeing? You can type extraterrestrial intelligent life into a search bar on, say, YouTube, and get tons of interesting information. But in 99% of cases, no one bothers to think about the main thing. Namely, in the phrase, extraterrestrial intelligent life, only one word. Extraterrestrial makes sense to everyone. But I'm getting carried away. Do you know who can solve the Fermi paradox? Nobody. Frank Drake, however, tried to do it. He's created a real equation that will tell us if we're really alone in the universe. This is what it looks like. We're trying to determine the number of civilizations that are willing to cooperate. You must be wondering what the answer is. I wish I knew. The thing is, we have a very basic knowledge of the variables, and there is no definite answer. The Drake equation is not aimed at solving a mystery. It was created to stimulate discussion. There is a problem. Where is everyone? The equation helps to break the problem down into smaller complex problems and solve them incrementally. There are different solutions, from the view that we are alone in the universe to the view that there are many other civilizations around us. Where is the truth? Everyone has their own truth. The biological sciences have, until recently, been concerned with the study of living things that inhabit the Earth and share a common history of origin and development. After all organisms, without exception, from the simplest blue-green algae to humans, use exactly the same genetic code in their vital activity. Yes, we are all products of planet Earth. You and your code are embodied information about what is happening on the planet. For example, almost all of the solar electromagnetic radiation that penetrates through the Earth's atmosphere is concentrated near the visible part of the spectrum. Thus, this is the most useful part from the point of view of the creatures that inhabit the Earth, and so it is the part they have adapted to perceive. Yes, if any of us were to get to the representatives of extraterrestrial intelligence on the other side of the universe, our compound eyes, our funny ears, our whole body would tell them a lot about the star system we come from. And so probably life on planet Earth and life in general are two big differences. But we will no longer pretend that we are really looking for extraterrestrial intelligence, realizing crystal clear exactly what we are looking for. We will honestly admit that we expect life and intelligence to be uniform in the universe. We will admit that we are looking for something like ourselves because that is the only option available to us. And with that said, things are very rosy indeed. We assume that the cumulative amount of energy that humanity uses for its needs will inevitably increase. When that happens, it looks like this. First, we will learn to use that fraction of the energy radiated by the sun that is on the planet, about 10 to the 17th degree watt, so we'll become what's called a Type 1 civilization. If suddenly you think that solar energy is some bullshit, here is a fact. The flow of solar energy on the Earth is about 3.8 joules per year, which eclipses the reserves of all remaining on the planet non-renewable energy resources, that is, oil, gas, coal, and so on. Then, with the help of some Dyson sphere, we'll start absorbing all the energy radiated by the luminary, about 10 to the 17th degree watt, becoming a Type 2 civilization. And lastly, by harnessing the energy of billions of stars in our galaxy, we'll become a Type 3 civilization. That it sounds epic, highly implausible, and all of which you've heard many times before. And you've also heard the phrase, sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. This is one of the laws formulated by science fiction writer and futurologist Arthur C. Clarke. The third law, to be precise. The first law goes like this. If an honored but aged scientist says something is possible, he is almost certainly right. If he says something is impossible, he is almost certainly wrong. And the second law, the only way to define the limits of the possible is to try to go a little beyond them. And these three laws were described by Arthur C. Clarke in the second edition of his book, Traits of the Future, in 1973, and they are more relevant now than ever. So we're not going to be so categorical about what technologies might be available to us in the future. According to some scientists, for example, the same Lyapunov, the absence of Type 3 civilizations in space, whose activities we could observe already here, speaks volumes. Already here and now, it is absolutely not natural, or it simply should not be so. Shklovsky said that the lack of cosmic miracles is the very real cosmic miracle. We want to be those smart people who learn from other people's mistakes, and so we ask ourselves, what is happening to civilizations in space? Why aren't they reaching Type 3? Try to think of a reason that would be absolutely universal to all civilizations, regardless of the conditions they live in, regardless of the level of intelligence they have attained. A reason that prevents life from embarking on unlimited interstellar expansion. This hypothesized cause even has a name: the Great Filter. This hypothesis in 1996 was expressed by Robin Hanson in his article. He writes that at most within the next million years, our descendants appear to have a predictable chance of reaching an explosive point where they will expand outward at close to the speed of light to colonize our galaxy and then the universe, easily doling out any less evolved life along the way. FTL travel, which by the way is not just a fantasy, such as the idea based on solving Einstein's FTL equation. First would be an even faster expansion. We expect such an explosion of intelligent life to fill virtually every available niche containing useful resources. So, what is preventing life once emerged from spreading to the entire cosmos? What is this mysterious thing, the Great Filter Herod? And to make a long story short, we have no idea at all. Robin Hanson identifies a number of steps in the history of life on Earth that may turn out to be it. So, for an interstellar civilization to emerge, a number of evolutionary steps must occur. First, the emergence of a star system with planets on which life could arise. 2. The appearance of self-replicating molecules, such as RNA, on one of those planets. 3. The emergence of simple, single-celled life, prokaryotes. 4th, the emergence of complex single-celled life, eukaryotes. Fifth, the emergence of sexual reproduction. Sixth, the emergence of multicellular organisms. Seventh, the emergence of animals with developed brains that use tools. Eighth, the achievement of the current state of humanity. Ninth, the spread of civilization into space through the process of colonization. According to the Great Filter hypothesis, at least one of these steps, if the list were complete, should be improbable. Note, not improbable, but improbable, or very close to being improbable. Now, for the creepiest of the above, we would have to hope that the Great Filter represents, for example, the emergence of eukaryotic life forms. What I hope is clear is that it would be good if the emergence of a complex cell with a nucleus is an improbable event. For example, it would follow that the Great Filter is in our past, and we have already passed it. We should hope that we never find any trace, however primitive, of life on Mars or the satellites of Jupiter and Saturn that arose independently of Earth life. If we do find them, it would mean that simple life in the universe is a common, easily occurring phenomenon. And if suddenly we find fossils of a complex life form on some Mars, then perhaps, as Oxford University professor Nick Bostrom has said, it will be the worst news ever printed on the front pages of a newspaper, because it would increase the likelihood that the Great Filter, which separates the simplest life from evolution to the spaceflight phase, has not yet been passed by us, and we are ultimately doomed to perdition in the future. There are two possibilities. Either we are alone in the universe, or we are not. Both are equally horrible. Arthur C. Clarke.